Staples, I got staples in my back, staples in my
Speaking from a
stomach.
hospital bed, Jacob Blake described his constant agony.
24 hours, every 24 hours, it's pain, it's nothing but pain. It hurts to breathe, it hurts to sleep, it hurts to move from side to side, it hurts to eat.
Blake was shot in the back by a Kenosha, Wisconsin policeman in August. He's had numerous surgeries and is paralyzed. The state's Department of Justice is investigating the shooting.
I just want to say, man, to all the young cats out there, and even the older ones, older than me, it's a lot more life to live out here, man.
In Rochester, New York, protesters clashed with heavily armed police. Police used chemical irritants against protesters who had launched fireworks at them. Some protesters formed a human chain, and there were several arrests. The demonstrators were demanding justice for Daniel Prude, who died in March after police restrained him, held him on the pavement, and put a mesh hood over his head. Prude's death was ruled a homicide. The New York Attorney General announced she would impanel a grand jury as part of what she termed an exhaustive investigation into Prude's death. 7 Rochester police officers involved in the killing have been suspended. In Louisville, Kentucky, Black Lives Matter demonstrators continued their protests over the death of Breonna Taylor, shot by police in her home in March. The protesters gathered outside a racetrack where the prestigious Kentucky Derby horse race was run. Armed counter-protesters, calling themselves pro-police patriots, confronted the Black Lives Matter marchers. There was arguing and yelling, but no violence, as the Patriot group eventually withdrew. And in Portland, Oregon, more protests over police misconduct and systemic racism continued for the 100th consecutive night. Portland has come to symbolize the most extensive nationwide protests the U.S. has seen in decades over racial injustice. As the summer season draws to its close, the U.S. faces a long, hot holiday weekend of protest. Rob Reynolds, Al Jazeera.
Welcome to the Gilchrist Experience. I see we got a little summary of the action that's happening in our environment. I'm happy to report that Breonna Taylor came to a settlement of $12 million, but that does not end anything. It's just a start. You know this case at all, Graham?
Who doesn't?
Huh?
You know,
Well, you know, what is the... We know the story. They went with a no-knock warrant.
Right.
And give us the particulars on what normally happens with a no-knock warrant.
I've used no-knock warrants, so I know the process, at least in New York.
And you announce yourself.
You do announce, you don't have to announce yourself. When I executed my no-knock, I announced myself. I rang the bell. Ironically enough, we executed that warrant in 955 Sheridan Avenue, which a few years prior had been the BLA safe house in the Bronx, where guys that I work with had been wounded. But I had to go to court, present the reason to the judge as to why a no-knock warrant should be executed. See, a normal warrant does not allow the police to enter the premises.
Okay.
Unless it's a search warrant, and that search warrant would specify why you're there and what you're looking for. So if you're looking for a stolen bicycle, you can't go in the closet, in the drawers, and, you know, opening up secret areas. A bicycle cannot be hidden in a small space. So the search is relative to what you're looking for. If you're looking for a person, you don't look in the drawer. You don't open drawers. You look in the room, look under the bed, look in the closet. Nobody's there. You might check the ceiling tiles if there are suspended ceiling tiles.
Now,
Other than
what
that,
was
no.
wrong with this request? The officer lied about the note. When he went to court, he lied.
Well, with a
what
no-knock,
happened?
see, I got a no-knock because,
But in this case, the guy lied about it, right?
well, see, that's, if the officer lied in the application for the warrant,
Right.
that's perjury.
Okay.
That's a felony. So he's already indictable
Okay.
if he lied. The guy they were looking for, and I just can't understand how you're looking for somebody that's already in custody. You haven't checked with your own department. You haven't, what we do, we call in and out to find out whether or not that person has been arrested within the last day, within the last hour,
Before you go out.
before you go out.
Okay.
You check in and out, all right? If the gentleman I was going for did have a weapon, we knew he was armed. We knew he had a lot of evidentiary material which could have been destroyed if he had the time, or it could have been burned, or it could have been flushed.
How did you know this?
I had an informant in the apartment with him. I also received direct information from his son, who he treated very poorly. So I had two independent sources of information.
And what about this case? What did the officer have?
I don't know what the officer presented to the judge.
Well, obviously, the guy who they were looking for was already under arrest.
He was already under arrest.
So he should have checked.
They
before
should
he
have checked
Okay.
with their own department to see whether or not that guy was still out.
Okay.
A guy, you know, you can get arrested 5 minutes from now. So they failed to do that. And then when you're doing a no-knock, normally there's no announcement. You just knock the door in with a battering ram, all right? So if you're home and someone is coming through your door, you have no announcement until the door is blown in. If they called out, it's the police, it's so-and-so and so-and-so. We don't know what was said. But the boyfriend, who was licensed to carry a firearm,
Right.
sought to protect himself and Brianna. So this gun battle ensues, and she gets hit 6 or 7 times, and 7, 8 times she got hit.
Yeah.
And
There
then
were
they
30
want to
rounds.
indict him.
30 rounds were fired.
Yeah, they want to indict him. When I did my warrants, I rang the bell.
Okay.
I said, Mr. Police, do not go to the fire escape. You'll get hurt. You got 5 seconds to open the door, or we're going to blow through it. And the guy came. See, because when you blow in a door, you also have to secure the premises after you leave. A unit has to come to repair the property. So rather than get into all of that, I rang the bell. I had an informant in the place with the guy, picked him up, no problem, recovered the gun, all the other material that we were looking for, and brought him out with no problem.
And in this case, what happened?
In this case, she winds up dead. Now, the other thing that's very disturbing is how they treated her mother. Her mother came to the premises and they told her she was at the hospital. She goes to the hospital. She's not at the hospital.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. They gave her the runaround while her body was there in the house.
Oh, wow.
And I think it was 6 or 7 hours before she found out where her daughter was, right there dead in the house.
That's terrible.
You don't do that to people,
I didn't
all right?
know that.
When Amadou Diallo was murdered, his cousin came out. The police asked him, do you know anybody that might have wanted to hurt your cousin? That's what they did. They took him to the precinct.
Oh, that's right.
They did a Q&A expecting him to give them a name so they could stick the shooting on that person. And this is a consistent pattern flowing through these departments across the country. It's not an isolated issue. When you mess up, just say, we messed up.
So why isn't the Attorney General indicting the officers?
The Attorney General she's doing an investigation, and the department there,
Kentucky.
oh, wait.
Kentucky is
Kentucky. I'm
black
getting these.
male, matter of fact.
It doesn't make any difference.
No, obviously.
Doesn't make a bit of difference. Many DAs fail to realize that they are to advocate for the victim. The police are not the victims. The general public, in this case, a citizen, is the victim of what could be a criminal proceeding. All right? Another thing, when an officer lies, definitely perjury. When you have a number of officers looking to protect another officer, that's another crime.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's the police chief, or the commissioner, the officers who were at the scene, they're going to make up a story. Everything forensically has to match. In the Diallo case, I knew they were lying because I went to the crime scene. I drew lines for all the bullet holes in that doorway. And there were 2 lanes of fire, and one was from a 45-degree angle. So if he had retreated into the vestibule and you're 45 degrees off to the right, there's no way you were firing at him. No way in the world, because if you say he retreated, why do you have all these bullet holes in the front of the door, the front right door jamb? It's because that's where he was standing when he was shot. The forensics have to match up with the story that you come up with.
All right, let's go to item 2.
Hold on a second.
Yeah.
The story, that was one story that they were after this guy,
Right.
and that he was at not another, he was already arrested, but the other story was that they were going there to confiscate weapons and I think drugs. And that was the other story.
Oh,
Breonna Taylor.
Breonna Taylor.
you just reminded me of something. The guy they were looking for is her ex-boyfriend.
Right.
They offered him a deal.
Yeah.
This shows you the further corruption. They offered him a deal to make up a story to say that she was involved in the drug distribution, to give them a justification. But that's not what the warrant was for. They don't have a justification. The warrant was not in pursuit of Breonna. It was in pursuit of this guy who was already arrested. But they were giving him a deal of probation if he would say that she was involved in the drug deal. And he said no.
That's currently.
Yeah.
That was just a week or so ago.
Right.
A month ago.
So they're trying to, it shows the corruption. And if they're going to give an offer like that, the DA has to be involved.
12 million?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
If they're going to give an offer to the ex-boyfriend
Oh, the DA.
to get no time, the DA has to be involved, because we sit with the DA and see if we could get certain considerations for different people. When I have an informant, the DA knows of my informant.
Okay.
All right?
I have a question, Graham, and that is, if they were going after him in guns and drugs, whatever that the contraband, would it be 3 guys in the morning going, or would it be a larger team?
When I
I
executed
thought it was
mine,
4.
I think it was 4. It was 4.
And it was 1:45 in the morning.
Yeah. I don't know the size of that department. I don't know what manpower deployment they have. You always want to have an upper hand. You know, if you're going for 1 guy, you're definitely not going to go with 2. If they went with 4, and it's a house, so you need to cover all points of entry and exit. So you got to, if there's a back door, you need people at the back door. Front door, the sides of the house, you have to have people with a view of all angles of the house. So if they went to that house with 4 people, they didn't even have enough people to properly do what they had to do to contain
Well,
the individual.
They had said that they expected to be there alone. But let's hear from Tamika Mallory. She's with ex-executive director of National Action Network, and she had a lot to say about this case. And I thought it was apropos that we hear from her. She's an old-time friend, an old friend, and an activist.
Thank you, Mayor Fisher. Justice for Breonna Taylor. And if there ain't gonna be no justice, there ain't gonna be no peace. A settlement is restitution, but it's not arresting the cops. And we want to say today that the police officers responsible for killing Breonna Taylor must be arrested in order for the community to feel calm. We understand that this is an acknowledgement, and a great acknowledgement, of the wrongdoing that has happened. And it is important that our community understands what happened here today is very significant. It is significant because, again, there is an acknowledgement of Breonna Taylor's life and the fact that those officers in this city murdered her. Breonna Taylor has shifted the atmosphere. She shifted it not just here in Kentucky, but across the country. The ban on no-knock warrants was where we begin in terms of great reform. And to know that Attorney Lanita Baker and Attorney Sam Aguiar continue to push for reform in this particular settlement is extremely important, and it cannot be denied. We must acknowledge it. The reforms are evidence that the city, unfortunately, its police department, has been exposed for some corruption that exists within the department. The significance of this settlement is a small price to pay for our sister's life, a very small price to pay. They deserve all the money that we can muster up in the world just to help a little bit with the feeling of pain and turmoil that I know exists within this beautiful family. But let us not lose sight on the main focus, as Tamika Palmer has said. The officers, Brett Hankinson, Miles Cosgrove, John Mattingly, and Joshua James must be arrested. We cannot forget about Joshua James, the man who lied on a no-knock warrant application that sent police officers charging into the home of Breonna Taylor and Kenny Walker. We cannot forget about any of those officers, and if this police department is to do right by this community, if you know of other officers who were involved, they should be arrested and indicted immediately. Again, the restitution portion is one part, but arresting the officers is what will make this city do right by its citizens, and not just Breonna Taylor, but all the Breonna Taylors across this city who are afraid sitting in their homes, because to not have an indictment happen in this city is to say that no matter how much we pay, no matter how much reform we do, we'd rather pay, we'd rather cover it than to deal with the issue. And so I have to say to you, Mayor Fisher, we want to thank you for your leadership, but we want to say that if for any reason these officers are not indicted, that you must instruct your police department to fire every single one of them on the spot. That is called getting justice for Breonna Taylor. Thank you very much.
All right, so that just brings it to its point there. So I think we're going to get justice, and I think the justice comes from voting. You remember last week we ended with George Floyd, and a lot of people never saw the drama of that knee on the throat. I mean, which has been a theme at National Action Network for a while now. And it was a theme at August 28th when we went to Washington. We see the result of all this marching and protesting is coming to a point where we're getting people to realize that they can't stay on the sideline and not vote. I intend to make every show an emphasis on voting. And let me play number 4 on Donald Trump. Now, the reason why I'm bringing up Donald Trump is because of all the shenanigans he's doing, and people still have some inkling that he might squeeze in there. I'm telling you, this buffoon is looking sillier and sillier every day. And I know there are other buffoons out there in America. I mean, obviously, last time, 62 million people voted for him. I mean, this has uplifted his delusions 100-fold. And we can see an insane man in the White House. You can tell that he's narcissistic, and that's the image of himself. He looks in the mirror and sees a king. I mean, he does. He's always been like this. I mean, ever since, because he's a New Yorker, and he's always been full of himself. And at a time that everybody was full of themselves, at, you know, the 60s, the 70s. If you had money, I mean, you were it. And now we come to, you know, 2012 when well, we won't go into the Russian part, but let me run number 4 and we just get a good look of what he was saying about COVID. You see this nonsense of he's trying to regress. We see him on audio saying that he dismissed, he knew that it was serious. Now, what do we have in the White House? And show the buffoon, number 4.
Thank you, Mayor Fisher. Justice for Breonna Taylor.
Sharpton is 3.
While they're setting that up, you heard about the change of venue they want to do in Wisconsin.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they
With
want to do
George
it.
Floyd?
Right. And it's always interesting when a police officer is arrested, they want to do a change of venue.
Like
When a
Amadou
civilian is
Diallo.
arrested, it's okay for him to be tried in the county where he committed the crime. But because of the publicity, that's not an excuse for a change of venue. And the thing is, when you do a change of venue, it has to go to a county that is analogous to the demographics of the county that it came from. And in Wisconsin, they'll do
talking
like
about
they
Minneapolis
did
or-
in Kenosha.
That's
Kenosha.
Blake, isn't it?
Yeah.
The one that you showed in the
Oh,
beginning.
Blake, yeah,
George Floyd.
there's so many, I'm losing it, man.
Yeah.
But you have to watch this because they did this in the Diallo trial. They got a change of venue. Judge Judy's husband facilitated that for them, sent the case not to Westchester, but to Albany, which is like 92% white. Nothing like the Bronx. And they had a jury with some scared black people on it, 1 or 2, and the rest of it was white. So the change of venue is not justifiable just because of the publicity. All right? If I rob a bank and rape an old lady and kill 15 children, they're not giving me a change of venue to go upstate somewhere and be tried. Those officers committed the crime where they were. They should be tried in the
So
county.
where are they going to move it to?
I don't know, but that's another scam they're trying to pull.
Well, I don't think they get away with it.
Well, they can get away with it if they want to. If the Attorney General
That is
wants to do it, they'll do it.
that is too obvious. That George Floyd. You're talking about Floyd, or what are we talking about? Wisconsin, Kenosha.
Wisconsin, Kenosha.
Talking about Blake.
That's Blake.
Blake,
The
That's the
7
one that-
shots in the back.
7, okay. Yeah.
You mentioned voting.
Right.
And voting, if you're here, if you're in this country, then, and the context is what we're dealing with.
Right.
We're dealing, when I say what we're dealing with as a people, I'm talking about as a people.
Amen.
You, black man, black woman, young brother who is able to vote, young lady who is able to vote, if you just take a little time and look at where the country is going under the leadership of this guy, and it doesn't mean that it's going to stop going the way it goes with somebody else in, but you will have, in my opinion, you will have a sliver of light in a situation where the Minister Farrakhan called it the unraveling of America.
Yes. Yes.
And-
yes.
Quote, there are those of us who need time to pull back and make plans to do this, that, or the other. But to not vote, to not register, and to not vote is really to be a part of the problem.
Right.
Amen.
And that's, you got to vote. It doesn't matter. I'm starting to say it doesn't matter who you vote for. You got to vote. If you're a black person going in that, you ain't gonna have no trouble.
Picking who to vote.
Otherwise, you ain't been involved in anything. But the family, maybe we organize in family, make sure our family members are registered.
That's it.
And make sure that we go vote or send the mail in, whatever. Maybe that's the action that we want to take, for the audience to take, as opposed to just hearing us talk. We got to take some action behind the information. Can't just say, you know, this guy is a bad guy. We got to take some kind of positive action behind the information that's available to us today.
All right. Well, here at National Action Network, last Saturday, Reverend Sharpton, my pastor, that's church, that's Saturday church for me, he had something to say about voting and how important it is. So play item 3, and then we'll, do you have item 3 ready? Number 3, okay.
Civil rights didn't write your resume, but civil rights made somebody read your resume. Trying to steal the election. He is trying to block you voting and having the mind to vote. Let me tell you something. Trump come to New York just like I do. They have a thing downtown on Times Square before the pandemic called 3-card monitoring, where they get you looking at the wrong card to take your money. He's trying to get you ready for the count, so that if Biden beats him, he can tell you, I told you they was cheating, I told you it was corrupt, and if you're not careful, they will be fighting the count all the way into 2021. You can't let them fake you out of it. Now, let me give you the black caucus of the fake. I want y'all to get this now. If you're in a beauty parlor, come from under the dryer. You need to hear this. The black part of the con is voting on me nothing no how. You just wasting your time. Ain't nothing gonna change. We had Obama 8 years, there ain't nothing changed. That's part of the black fake. To talk you out of that. We are not where we need to be. But to say that we have not gotten anything done is a lie. My mother, my father, born and raised in the South, could not go to schools with white kids, could not vote, could not go to a public toilet, could not check in a hotel, couldn't use a water fountain in the town they were born in. I'm not talking about back in the prehistoric days, I'm talking about my mama. Don't tell me ain't nothing changed. That didn't change by automation. That didn't change because one day folk woke up and said, let's be nice to Negroes. That changed because folk got out there and fought and stood up and voted for people that would make the change. You going to school that blacks couldn't get in, and sitting up there getting a PhD in ingratitude. Well, the way I analyze this thing is the metamorphosis of it. The way I analyze you is that you would not be there analyzing if some folk with no D's and some with no diplomas hadn't paid a price. And therefore, voting don't solve everything, but it addresses some things. And if you're trying to dig your way out of being put in the pit, you use everything that is available to lift yourself out of the pit. But Trump is going to have them come out here with all this vote no matter stuff. Then he going to come with, where is Biden and them on these issues? Well, where's Trump? Got called me on my radio show the other day. Well, I'm not forgiving Biden for the crime bill. I said, well, I marched against the crime bill and Biden in '94. But Trump is for it now. Biden said there was unintended consequences. They shouldn't have done certain parts of it. Trump is for it now. Trump said we ought to have stop and frisk nationally now. How you more mad at somebody 25 years ago than you are somebody today?
In the here and now.
As you see, that's my Saturday church, and that's me yelling, "Tell them, Rev." And it's apropos for what we need to tell ourselves. You know, we got to get off the angry trip and talking about what happened in the past and pay attention to our future. And the future is to get out and vote, because the drama is truly here. I mean, this man is going to try everything he can to stay out of jail.
Yep.
And the only way he can stay out of jail, the New York con man has got to con us once again.
Mm-hmm.
And he has no doubt he has the skill of a con, because he conned his way into this situation. But he didn't expect to win, no doubt.
Right.
But what he's done is a miracle to him. I mean, his ego floated up 100-fold, especially after he was impeached and nobody would touch him. He thinks he's untouchable.
Yeah.
He really believes that he's delusional enough to think he can pull it off again. He's got enough nuts out there running. We saw QAnon
Yep.
last week, and there are a bunch of groups out there.
You know, they said there are over 100,000 people who are homeless in California right now as a result of the fires. I spoke with my son on Sunday. He lives in LA. He said he went out. He was out for about a minute and had to go back in the house because the air was burning his lungs. He's in Los Angeles. 100,000 people burned out of their homes. And this idiot gets on the news yesterday and says, oh, it's going to get cooler.
Yeah.
You'll see.
You hear that?
The scientists don't know.
You hear that?
People are homeless. People are going homeless because of COVID. They don't have money to buy food. They have to go to a food pantry. White people are now seeing, because those areas in the foothills of California, those are not tenement houses. No. Those are the suburbs that he was talking to the quote-unquote white housewives about.
Well, California
Section 8.
California didn't vote for him, so he doesn't care.
Right. But the thing is that people should wake up. The people in the Rust Belt, he didn't bring factories back for them to get jobs. Steel mills are not opening. Coal mining is not coming back. They have gone through 3.75 years with this guy. Healthcare. I've had healthcare all my life. Mm-hmm. My mother worked for the city. We had Blue Cross Blue Shield. Obamacare was not an issue for me, didn't need it, but people do need it. And there are areas of this country where white people live, and they have to wait for the medical van to come through their county once every month or once every other month. They don't have health care, but the senators have health care, the congressmen have health care, their families have health care, but the people voting for Donald Trump, a lot of them don't have health care.
Why are they sticking with Donald Trump? Leroy?
Well, that's what's shown we're looking at, in my opinion, we're looking at a stage show.
Okay.
This stuff
Right.
is manipulated by way of the media.
Right.
The outcome of the election, the people who donate to one donate to the other. Quote, they're not going to lose, whoever comes in. That's why it's important for us as a people to watch and to act and to register and vote, because our livelihoods, our lives is at stake, and that of our grandchildren and those that we haven't even gotten hit the planet yet. When you ask the question about why are they still backing him, my response is that's what we're told. They don't show surveys in the white community. They don't do that. They don't show you we can do, those of us who have market research background, we can do a survey. When I say we, those of us who know market research and marketing. And it's not difficult to do, and it's not difficult to get whites to go to hire them or get volunteers to go in the communities and get a real feedback. It's not impossible. These polls that they're taking are small numbers of people. They always say this poll says this. He's gaining in Wisconsin. He's losing in Texas. It's a charade. It really is, to get us emotionally involved, to bet on someone to win. And if they win, then we lay back for them to do for us what we have to do for ourselves. That's why I'm saying we have to step back. We have to step back as a people in our church congregations and our mosques and masjids and really look what's going to happen in the next year or so. And I'm not even dealing with COVID, that thing. What's going to happen with all the people who are unemployed, the businesses? You go along Broadway, I'm astonished by the businesses that are the people out of business, storefronts. So,
and the restaurants are going to close as the air gets colder. People are not going to be sitting on the curb eating food. Those restaurants will be shut down from maybe October, where the temperature is now starting to drop as it is. So people are not going to be sitting in the street eating food in the cold. So those restaurants will be shut down until next April if they survive and come back.
And what's difficult about setting up, if they have to have spacing inside a dwelling, what is difficult about giving a plan? It can't take that long. It can't. We are looking at folks who have been running America. We'll come in, and I'm not saying myself. We have people who will go in and figure out the thing and say, hey, this how the spacing should go. It's mathematics.
Well, it's the belief system.
I'm sorry.
It's the belief system. It's what we believe can happen to us. We've got to fight over masks now, and Donald Trump is like, he's confusing everybody. I mean, he puts so much confusion. But you'd be surprised. A lot of people are totally confused by him. And because he says, but we should know his game by now. I mean, it's quite obvious.
He's a manipulator.
Obviously.
The guy's an entertainer. He's a manipulator.
Yeah.
He's been doing it for years. He knows how to smile. He knows how to change like a chameleon. And when you see it, you can't get angry at it. You have to defend. You have to give your people an understanding of what is going on. As you say, people are confused because they look at him
outside of New York.
Outside of New York?
Outside of New York.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you were talking about the guns being sold in the West, not in Western, out there.
Nassau County. Nassau County.
Those people.
That's outside of New York.
It's outside New York. I'm saying we can't fool
New York
ourselves.
City, I mean.
They are right next door. You understand?
Yeah. Well, you go to Jersey, you might find something similar.
They're right next door. The KKK is right next door.
They're in Nassau County. They're in Valley Stream, the Klan. A friend of mine shot 2 Klansmen in Valley Stream a number of years ago.
That's Trump territory.
He's a state trooper,
But we've got Long Island, and that's Trump territory. Always has been.
Well,
But emphasis on the vote and Biden, what to suggest to Biden. We've got a classic minute here where we have to set down a role for us to play in the future. You know, here is our chance to really vote in unity and come up. Now, I've heard Biden speak about electric cars. Now, there's a whole new industry
When you
for
saw electric cars,
electric cars.
as though that's going to help the people who are homeless in
No, but
California
you know,
for the fire.
his most
Industry, a new industry for us to
Right.
dominate the planet again.
But his most pressing issue, they're saying, is his connection with the Latino population. He has not been addressing them, and the Latino population
I think we can cover everything.
is
Just
very
stick with the black
fragmented.
people. I mean,
no,
don't we have enough of a force?
no, we're not. The Latino population is very
Well, they come
fragmented.
along. I
The
don't think there are
Cubans
too many,
don't get along with the Puerto Ricans. They're as fragmented as any
we
other
are,
group.
huh?
The Cubans are more Republican than they are Democratic because of Castro.
Aren't they making sense of all this?
No, they're not. I've been to Miami over the years, and the Cubans are a
has it
different.
changed?
They are a different grouping altogether,
Okay.
and many Latinos see themselves as white. That term, white Hispanic,
Okay.
that was a game played on them years ago by Reagan. I respect Fidel Castro in saying to his people, there are no white Hispanics. We are Cubanos. We are not white, and we're black Cubanos. The blacks are not going to sweep the street and clean the toilets while the fair skins have the better jobs. He cut that out. And that's why when you go to Miami, you don't see black Cubanos in Miami because they brought the fair-skinned Cubanos
Yeah.
here, all right? So they want to be something they're not. And I've seen it at work with the Guardians and the Hispanic Society. And I will say this with no apology. Our people carried the burden of civil rights, and everybody else jumped on the
That's right.
bandwagon to get the benefits.
That is absolutely
and they're still
correct.
getting the benefits. There was a sergeant, I'm not going to mention his name, but he joined in a lawsuit that we had. I'll make this real quick. Black and Latino filed a lawsuit with the Transit Police Department. The chief of the department called him down and said, I almost said his name. I see your name is on the list here with the lawsuit. Yeah, he says, well, why? He said, I'm Latino. And he starts, I'm so, blah, 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 blah. The chief said, well, this is your personnel folder. He turned it around.
Wow.
These are the papers you filled out when you came here. What does that say? You classified yourself as white. So when they want to be white to get by, they'll be white to get by.
Well,
And that's
yeah.
part of their problem because they're not sure where they want to be, but they want to play the game.
Back in the day, you had black people doing the same thing, right?
Well, far fewer that
could
in
pass,
between
you
today.
pass.
But they consistently do that. 53% of them classify themselves as white. And they
That's
have that
always-
Republican mindset. And I've talked with some of them and said, oh, health care is not a right. As though.
You can see white people that are really white turning on Trump, that voted for Trump. And we have to appeal to the like mind. There's one race, the human race, in this case, and we've got to put race aside and talk about being human. And this man isn't human. Let's make that a point.
He's human.
No, he isn't.
He is human.
He doesn't make any other
human.
classification of human.
He's human. If he donated blood and you got sick and you didn't know it was his blood, you'd be
No.
getting it. He's human.
No, he's a devil, period.
Well, he has one.
He
has
is a
one. He's
devil,
a human with a
period.
devil.
I mean, well, we're all human and we all have a God and a devil in us, but we cater to the better part of ourselves.
I'm
Not
saying he's
everybody.
made a pact with the devil.
Obviously, he always has been. His family talks about him. His niece is, but I don't know if we got that clip of him, but no, you never got that one. All right. So what are we doing? I wanted to talk about Insurrection Church and run
yes.
that item's on. What item was that? That was 5. Run 5 for me, and we'll come back and talk about some crazies out there. The Moonies. And all these are, well, they didn't say they were Trump people, but we can count on people like the Moonies to be out there. Like
us, what our pastor is teaching right now, we call the rod of iron, which is the teaching of self-defense. We as good, people, we strongly believe in the Second Amendment. People have the right to bear arms, and in God's kingdom, you have to protect that. You have to protect, against evil. So showing the rod of iron, which represents, for our church, is the AR-15. And it represents that you can protect against evil with that rod of iron, in a sense.
I don't need a freaking assault weapon to defend myself. Only thing they're good for is killing, period. That's all that weapon is good for, mass killing. And you want to bless it? Shame on you.
It's scaring people in the community. I mean, the school had to move to another location today.
Yeah.
So I want to know, are you aware of that effect? And how do you talk to people about that?
Here's the funny thing is that this has actually been made public that we're going to do something like this. So actually, well, here's the thing. Actually, it'd be a lot more scarier if we didn't put it out in public.
I'm of the side of the opinion that we do have the right to bear arms, and only for the purpose of protecting and defending our families, not to make war. It's a weapon of defense to keep the peace. Amen.
Over there.
I mean, do you believe that? Everybody's got. I saw this, and there's some other stuff I didn't bother, but I wanted people to see people in church with AR-15s. I mean, what has America come to?
Well,
gentlemen,
the Unification Church, quote unquote,
started out in the 50s.
It's not a real church. When you look at Sun Myung Moon and what he was teaching, it's not a church.
It was a drug deal.
It's a cult. And he is not under the auspices of any organized church in this country or even globally. And I don't know. See, he had people believing he was a deity.
Right.
But he died. So if you're a deity, how can you die? All right? It's not a church. It's a scam. It's a cult. It's a fraud. And the word church is a very broadly used term, but it has a definitive meaning, and that is not a church. A church is a group of believers who are followers of Jesus Christ and his disciples. That's what a church is. And it's not in a building. It is the people. Mm-hmm. It is not a building. A church is a people. With COVID, you've got pastors say, oh, we have the right to get together and worship and come to church. You don't come to church. The people are the church. And in COVID, you can worship from home because you are the church. Mm-hmm. It's not the building, it's the people. Mm-hmm. But Sun Myung Moon does not preach anything related to the gospel. It's not a church.
Well, I didn't even understand what that segment was about. I saw this lady holding something. I said, that must be a sign. That was a shotgun? That was
a gold AR-15.
They all had AR-15s.
They had AR-15s.
The thing, when you see it, you say, well, who benefits from this? Who are they reaching? It's not what you see. It's analyzing as best you can what might be behind it. So right off the bat, there's an advertisement. That's an advertisement right off the bat for those particular weapons.
Right.
And then possibly, no, I'm not just going to say possibly, then you'll have people emulating that action. They'll be carrying, feel free to carry guns and whatnot.
That's it.
And there are some people who say if we had guns in that church in South Carolina, this guy, but that's a stretch. I'm not saying that for Leroy. I'm talking about how people think.
That's not our way.
That is correct.
Mm-hmm.
But today you have more security in churches than you ever had before. I'm talking about in black churches, and the brothers there do not look like they're gonna be messed with. I'm talking about churches now. I ain't talking about the mosques. So you have the notion of security as a result of those hits that were made in black churches. But that there is, for us, that's a message as to where these weapons are. If there's a riot, or a so-called riot in a particular town, there's also, the next day, there's these arms being sold. But and you say, well, where are they going? People, whenever I've seen a Caucasian man who's been arrested for weapons, when they go into his house, they have about am I right? They have
dozens and dozens of weapons, right?
And they have knives. So I'm saying this guy can't. He's guy's got to be a dealer in weapons. He just can't have that kind of collection. But
see,
I'm naive.
I see this supporting the white supremacists, and you know
the ideology.
Yeah, the ideology of self-defense. Now, this is prevalent throughout white supremacist society.
They are trying to couple the madness of white America with the church. The church has nothing to do with America. I'll be very clear. The church didn't start in the United States. The church didn't start in Rome. What these Christians on this side of the Atlantic have done, they have nationalized Christianity. Christianity is not about nationalism. It's only about the worship of God and of Christ. There were Christians worshiping together in Iraq. When Saddam Hussein, they say, was the dictator, they were worshiping freely as anybody can worship in this country. There was no problem.
That's correct.
Only when, that's right.
That's correct.
The Church of the Chaldees, Abraham, the father of the Israelites, the Christians, and the Muslims. Abram came from Ur of the Chaldees. Where is Ur of the Chaldees? 40 miles north of Baghdad. That's Iraq. That's where Abram is from.
Right.
He wasn't white. He wasn't Jewish. And he was from Iraq, Ur of the Chaldees. The Christians who were worshiping in Iraq under Saddam Hussein cannot worship today because a quote-unquote Christian man said God told him to drop bombs on them after 9/11. All right? So there are Christians across the globe. It's not about the flag. God doesn't give a flying fig about the American flag, the German flag, the Russian flag, the French flag. He don't care about that because they don't represent him. They don't represent God. None of them do. So here people think they can grab God and say God and country. No. God ain't, oh, I'm with you and I'm not with them. And no. His people are across the globe, which is one reason why I refused to serve in the Vietnam War, because I woke up, you see.
Well, that was a tough one.
Well, I had to do what I had to follow my conviction. That was my conviction. But people that know and love God are everywhere. They're in every country. They're Democrats, Republicans. They're in Russia. They're in China. They're everywhere.
They're human.
And there are decent human beings everywhere. Coming back to what you said, we're humans.
Yeah.
And we need to treat one another as such.
Amen. And that's being godly, because God is love. If you have that element of love in you, you have God in you. I always say in here, the God in me loves the God in you. And people think I'm serious about it. Because everybody has a God in there somewhere.
When you study that, when you pursue the study in that, then you can see the realization of that.
Yeah.
When I'm saying, I'm not saying you, I'm saying when one studies, what is this connection of God, the Supreme Being, and the connection with me?
Mm-hmm.
What is that connection? Is it valid?
You're made in His image.
There you go.
Yeah.
Therefore, you have His DNA.
Right, exactly.
And if you have that DNA, then you can do many of the things that, quote, God can do.
Yeah.
The actuality is that you work in partnership with God when you begin to demonstrate the godly qualities and attributes of God. Now you have a connection.
Amen. Yeah.
You have a connection which makes you strong. People will look at you and say, well, no, you weren't born with it. You studied it. You worked it. you practiced it. You learn from your errors, and you build on that. As the brothers in the street love to say, you build on that. But the God within, that's why it's painful for us, I'm talking about the three of us, when we see our people who lack that knowledge, who freely will shoot one another. And I'm not, that's not everybody, that's an element.
Right.
And at the same time, you have to ask the question, why? And our children are being programmed through the lyrics in the music, plus the video games.
I was about to mention, I saw a special on Motown, and I realized how we were raised. Motown came out in '58, and you could see that all that love energy permeated throughout the planet.
I've got my girl.
And that was the love energy of black people, man. We were at our best. I mean, the love energy that came out of all those songs in Motown was it. And we were raised on that. I mean, we were adults when they came into effect. But before that, we were into jazz and so forth. But we were into music and expressing our energy. If that was one thing we could do, that they couldn't keep away from us, our ability to sing and enjoy and express the God that lied within us. But when I came and I saw this, I realized the difference between Motown and 50 Cent, which came out in the 80s, was what our people are up against now in the music and the drama of hip-hop. I mean, there was good hip-hop, and there's the gangster part.
Yeah, but you see,
and you can see that the Illuminati took hold of the gangsters that were selling dope and made them hip-hop artists.
The gangster rap came from the West Coast, and that was promoted by white producers.
That's what I'm saying.
All right?
Exactly what I'm saying.
When hip-hop started in the Bronx, take KRS-One, he rapped history, all right? Those white producers on the West Coast got some ignorant brothers and said, look, I'll pay you and do this to denigrate yourself, denigrate your people, because they knew that by repetition, through the music, people would adapt.
You know, we got 15 seconds left, and I think we'll do something next week on explaining to you what happened to the 80s when Ronald Reagan came in and our whole world changed. That was it. And again, the God in me loves the God in you, and pay attention to the God in you. Look in the mirror and talk to God. Power to the people. We got another minute for the Bronx.
May I make this recommendation? It's a very, very informative film. It's called The Banker. The Banker. John Mackey and Samuel Jackson. It's an excellent film. It's got a lot of messages in it. It's something that you can sit and study and be motivated from. The Banker. It's an important film.
All right.
I think that is on Netflix. You can catch it on Netflix.
It's an Apple film.
Who's in it?
It could be on Netflix.
Yeah.
I don't know.
The Banker.
All right.
The Banker.
Next week we'll go over the 80s and how we turned around. And
maybe I'll bring the Ronald Reagan poster. Make America Great Again.
We talk about the Crips and the Bloods, how they started out on the West Coast with real gangsterism. All right? Power to the people, and peace go with you. God is real.
The God in me loves the God in you.
Yeah.
I said that already.